What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. It's Friday, so we got the weekend coming up. Let me know what you're playing this weekend, actually. I got a couple things I'm going to be going over, probably a little more Ghostbusters, and then probably I'll be hopefully getting a chance anyway to look at Ukulele, which we're going to talk about here soon as well. Then, of course, we'll go into the podcast, talk about some other games throughout the week. Today, though, we have a bunch of stuff to go over because we are now seeing Ubisoft do a complete, about face, and they are backpedaling right now on some of these microtransactions after the backlash. We'll talk a bit about that and why, while you still got to keep an eye on this because I think they're coming back. But again, we'll go over all of that. And then also, I want to talk a little bit about what's going on with Pokemon because there seems to be some confusion right now over some of the reportings that came out from Game Informer while they had the big story and scoop and everything. There was an interesting story that appears to be incorrect or misinterpreted about the number of gyms in this game. So we're going to kind of get to the bottom of that and then cover a few other things as well today. As always, guys, do these videos, make sure you hit the like button. It does help out, and get subscribed so you can stay updated on all the gaming news going on in the gaming world. And we're actually going to start today with Ukulele, the Impossible Lair. It's a game that when I saw it, I said, you know what? That makes a lot of sense for them to do this. Of course, these are ex-Rare developers who worked on Donkey Kong Country. So to hear that they would be doing a 2D ukulele game after tackling kind of the collectathon, right? It was supposed to be kind of the idea of Banjo and Kazooie, just kind of moved over to their own idea. To me, it made sense to take that game and turn it into kind of a 2D, but it still apparently has kind of an adventure style to it as well, where you go around in kind of an overworld, a hub world. But on Metacritic, it has an 83. And it looks like reviewers are really, really enjoying this one, and I am so happy because like I said, when I originally saw it, I thought it was a good idea. It looked good. Didn't look like it was going to be this massive budget or anything, so that'll at least give them a chance to probably make some money back on it so they can work towards another game and everything. But to see the ex-Donkey Kong Country developers work on a game like this and put out a high-quality product, from what I'm seeing in reviews, I still need to play it myself, and I will. I'm just happy to hear that so far it's looking good, and that makes me a bit more inclined to jump in and spend the money to buy it. Also, with all of the talk that we have about loot boxes and microtransactions, it seems to make the news if you're not going to have that stuff in your game. Now, I know, of course, we see this with PR where they will point it out. They'll say, look at all those people over there having microtransactions. We don't have any of that stuff. Well, THQ Nordic has been heavily against really what we've seen with loot boxes and everything. They've been pretty vocal about it, and now it looks like they have taken an interview just to let us know, yeah, there's no microtransactions in Darksiders Genesis, saying, that's easy, no microtransactions at all in Darksiders Genesis. In general, THQ Nordic is treating the topic very carefully, and we are only offering DLCs if we think that it perfectly fits to the game, and we see a high demand from players. We've never done and never will do loot boxes or any other gambling mechanics. And that's from Reinhard Paulus, who is the business and product development director of THQ Nordic. And this is another thing about THQ Nordic. I've said it before, they're kind of old school, right? They put the game out, they sell it, they kind of move on. That's about it. We hear that they have 70-something games in development, and while that might be they have one game, but on 4 platforms, they count that as 4 instances, still they are in the mindset of make a game, sell it, make a game, sell it. Oh, they like the game, let's create more content for that game and sell it. I think that's what a lot of us really want. I mean, the loot box and microtransactions, sure, they make a lot of money, but really, the best way, I think, is you make a product and you sell it, and THQ Nordic is still on that old school mindset, at least it seems for now. We'll see if anything changes, but hey, I can look forward to their stuff apparently because there's none of that stuff in there. Darksiders Genesis looked pretty good, looked like a Diablo-style game, so that'll at least be interesting. But I'm happy to hear that some of the stuff they announced, we hopefully don't have to worry about any of that crazy in-game monetization going forward. Oh, and real quick, do you remember how we had that Dragon Quest, was it 1, 2, and 3 that showed up on the eShop, and Square Enix had announced it, and then they said it was coming west? Well, now there's also a physical copy coming out October 24th. Fortunately, the Switch, of course, region-free, so you can pick it up on, it seems, PlayAsia, having it be import and everything, or maybe you can find it on Amazon Japan. I saw it on PlayAsia. I think it was $40, and then there's probably some shipping involved as well. But again, not too bad. It's good for collectors who want to have all of that on one cartridge. Otherwise, it's at least on the eShop already anyway. And of course, that'll work in your Switch, no problem. So I guess check it out on PlayAsia October 24th if you're looking to have it physically for your collection. And guys, some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. let's start with this Pokemon Sword and Shield confusion. Now, Game Informer, massive write-up. They have the covers, of course, in November, several different ones you can collect, I believe 3 of them, 2 of them wrap around, one of them just 2 pictures. But they had a ton of information about the game and what sounded like a larger and larger game as we went along in the interviews and the questions and all of the stuff they did. But one piece of information seemed to come out, sounded insane, right? It sounded crazy. 18 gyms. There's a lot of gyms to go through. That's going to take a while, right? That sounded great. And in fact, I saw a lot of people get really excited when this bit of information came out, almost like they were on board, and they're like, oh yeah, this is great. You know what? I understand National Dex and stuff, but I want to see how this turns out. We heard about Major League and Minor League and all this stuff, and it sounded really, really cool. But it looks like there may have been some kind of misunderstanding, mistranslation. Hard to say, but the Pokemon Company actually had to issue a correction. And I'm going to go back to Cerebi on this one because they're pretty straightforward with the Pokemon stuff. And we're just going to go over the passage that they put out and then kind of break it down a bit because even it's still kind of confusing overall when it comes to this, but this is what Cerebi had to report. Game Informer have received a follow-up from their original article about the gym statement reported on October 1st. With this, they state that they were told that there would be a similar amount of gyms to battle as prior games, but some do change between versions as seen with Bay's fighting type gym in Sword and Alistair's ghost type gym in Shield. In the game's lore, however, there are 18 across the leagues. As reported back in July, there are 8 gym badges to collect in the game, and they'll provide further details as we go on, so make sure you stay up to date with Cerebi. Of course, you may already know that for all of the Pokemon news that comes out. So looking at this, looking at just the story, the lore and everything, yes, there are 18 gyms it seems. The major leagues and the minor leagues seem to still be in play, but you are still going to go to the same number of gyms, it seems anyway. They keep saying you're going to get the same number of gym badges. There's going to be 8 to collect, but I do wonder if there are gyms that maybe just don't do badges. It's not as clear. 18 is still more than you would need between 2 different versions if they had all different gyms. It does sound like some will be different between the 2 versions. That's something we heard before, but from what I can tell here, I guess to have the full experience, you will indeed need both games. Now, it's going to also depend on which gyms, I guess, end up in which ones and where you want to go. And maybe you want Sword now, but you're going to find out there are certain gyms in the other one, that's Shield. It's still kind of confusing. I feel like we're going to end up to the point where the game comes out and then we'll find everything out about this. It seems like they're trying really hard to explain it, but it's not coming across very well. From what I can tell, again, 8 gym badges. You're probably going to travel to possibly more than that in terms of gyms, but they will be different between the different versions. 18 gyms across the lore in terms of the story and the world building, so we'll see how all of that comes out. It's going to come down to us waiting for the game to come out most likely. We still don't even know what the evolutions look like for the starting Pokemon, but they could drop that at any time on Twitter or anything. And of course, there is also a 24-hour live stream apparently going on starting today, so hey, maybe they'll mention it there. Next up, let's talk about Ubisoft and Ghost Recon Breakpoint. That's actually out today. Well, it came out a few days ago. I don't know. They do that thing where they sell you an Ultimate Edition that's the real release date and then push the release date back a few days for regular users. Again, multiple versions, more money. So let's talk a bit about the microtransactions that we covered previously that have now been removed from the game. Yeah, that's right. Remember those time savers where you buy skill points and everything and it kind of fast tracks you through the game that you just paid for $100? Yeah, so those have been removed, and what's interesting about this situation is it doesn't sound like they're going to be removed for good, because PC Games N actually got a hold of Ubisoft, and this is what they have to say about it. These items were designed as an optional way for players arriving later to the game post-launch to catch up with those who have been playing for longer and enjoy our co-op and challenging endgame experiences. These time savers have since been removed from our store for now. Yes, for now. It is a live services-based game, which means they need to remove them long enough to let things kind of blow over. That's the idea, right? We got to get the heat off of this game for now, and then we can put them back later as really the mass, I guess the mass audience kind of moves on from it. See, the video game world moves very, very fast. The time saver stuff, I don't really know why that needs to be in there. They say that it's to help you get caught up very quickly with, your friends or people around you. Well, most of the time you can just play the game and get caught up. And to the people who are just doing the end game stuff, wouldn't you want them to go through the game itself, the story, and experience the story. It seems strange to me not to do all of that and just buy the skill points and then go jump into the end game stuff or anything that's going on, I guess, later in the game. It seems very strange. I don't really know why it needs to be there. They've pulled it back for now. Here's the thing. It probably will show up. So keep that in mind if you're like, oh, we're good now. There's a good chance it's going to come back. So don't be surprised if like a month or two from now you log in and all of a sudden there's skill points to buy. We've seen it in opposite directions, right? Where Black Ops 4 didn't add anything until 3 months later when a lot of people had moved on and a lot of the reviews had come out. This is the whole point about live services and why people have talked about it in this way before. It's ever changing, which means different things can be added in, removed, added in to get around really backlash. Next up, let's talk about Mario Kart Tour because it has been exceptionally popular on the different app stores on Android and iOS and everything. In fact, believe it or not, in its first week, that's right, just 1 week, 7 days, 90 million downloads. That is insane. It has been exponentially growing for downloads since it came out. Because remember we talked about like 10 million, 20 million, 90 million. It is growing rapidly. And I know there are people who are not very happy with the monetization on it. In fact, that's the thing I keep hearing is that it's very, very aggressive with the monetization. It of course has a subscription pass. It tries to sell you all types of premium currency. So you would figure this game with 90 million people downloading it would probably make a lot of money, right? Even though I know that the pass has like a 2-week trial, they still have other things to buy quite a bit of, right? So you figure, okay, yeah, that would make sense. They'd probably get a lot of people buying. Not the case, actually. What's interesting is it is more than 10 times the number of Fire Emblem downloads in its first week, like way above it. If you look at the graphs for it, it's huge. Like it is massive, massive amounts of downloads. But it's made $12.7 million. You might be wondering, well, okay, how does that compare to the others? Well, it's actually third place, and that means it's behind Super Mario Run's $16.1 million in its first week, and Fire Emblem Heroes absolutely trounces it with $28.2 million. And you might be wondering, well, why is that? You know, it's kind of hard to say. To be honest, it's just Mario Kart Tour, while the downloads look great, the unique users and everything, they're not spending any money on the game. And that's kind of the idea of it. Now, Fire Emblem has had a massive foothold in Japan and made way more money than it probably should for the amount of people who have downloaded it this time. And of course, Super Mario Run was a one-time purchase. You were able to download it and play like a couple levels, but then you had to spend $10 on it. Even that has gained more money than what we've seen with something like with Mario Kart Tour. So it seems like they have a lot of people invested, but not necessarily invested with money, just invested with downloads and time. And there's also a lot of people who maybe downloaded it and said, that was fun, and then they just exited out. They're not, I'm more curious to see how much time is actually spent in this app rather than, I guess, just how many people have downloaded it, because there's probably a lot of people who download it, play it for 10 minutes, and then uninstall it when they realize that you got to spend money just to get Mario. And our last bit of news, let's talk about the Nintendo PlayStation. Do you remember this thing? Here's a picture of it. If you forgot about this was something that randomly popped up on Reddit and absolutely took the internet by storm. It was crazy because we heard about this thing. It's back when Sony and Nintendo came together and almost made a system. This was, of course, before the Sony PlayStation came out, the original one, and that took over, of course, the video game world. But before then, they were almost working together, and they were in the prototype stages, at least it seems. And then we saw Ben Heck get it working and everything, and since then, it has been making the rounds constantly. Conventions, events, everywhere. And it looks like now the owner is looking to sell it. Here's the thing though, before we read this tweet, I figured he was going to be selling it anyway. Like, I think a lot of people were figuring that, as it seemed to have been his plan according to other people on Twitter, specifically people who responded to the thread. But this is actually what was said on Twitter. Terry Diebold, that we have invited several years ago at Magic Monaco, just informed me that he wants to sell his Nintendo PlayStation official prototype. I am very curious to know what the final price for this. I guess a crazy world record will happen, and yeah, I could see that. I'm trying to think of how much money will happen here. There have been talks of people saying possibly looking for millions of dollars for this, and there are some that are frustrated because it may not end up in a museum, for example. It could be bought by a very wealthy private collector. I made a joke under the Twitter thread for Go Nintendo, like, oh, we'll take this apart. Yeah, no, it's probably gonna go for quite a bit of money. It could, like I said, break into the millions even. So it's not gonna be something that most people will pick up. I think there are gonna be a lot of museums that would be outbid as well. And I know we want it to end up in a place where more research can be done to it, or of course people can see it. But I mean, it's his system, you know? I mean, if he wants to sell it and make a bunch of money from it, you know, a life-changing amount of money, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And if he wants to do that, that's fine. I have seen some people talk about trying to pool and crowdsource money, and that's fine too. I think if he can work out a fair price that he's happy with a museum or a large organization that is willing to keep it public, I guess, or even have it be archived and everything, I think that's the best route. But I mean, let's be honest, everyone watching, if a private collector came to you, offered you double, even triple what they were offering, I mean, let me just ask you which way you would go. Let me know down below. And we'll finish up the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This one is from Mouse Talks saying, IGN and GameSpot won't fight for gamers. If they did, they wouldn't get early review copies. I've wondered that at times because we've seen it. Bethesda has had issues. Gearbox, interestingly enough, has recently had issues with Borderlands 3. They didn't give one the giant bomb, for example, and that was strange to me. It seemed like there was some bad blood maybe there. They talked about it in a podcast, and I was like, that's unprofessional for a large company to do that. But I mean, technically review copies are considered privileged, obviously. It's not like you need to get it right away. You can, like, I'll buy games sometimes after they come out and talk about them then, and I'm fine with that. I don't really review games as much. You know, we do like news and I'll tear down controllers and stuff, and that's always fun. I like the technology side as well as the games, but if I'm gonna review one or the other, I kind of would rather review the technology stuff if I can. So I'm fine with that, but yeah, that is an interesting tightrope to kind of walk, right? You don't want to make the publisher or developer too mad, because then you're like, well, maybe I won't get the review copies. I like to think that companies don't have that mindset, because you should call out the games that need to be called out. Like Ubisoft is backpedaling. You know what? They probably should be. So you might be onto something there, but I would like to assume that they're not thinking that way. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, the like button really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about, whether it's the Pokemon gym confusion. You heard 18 gyms. Now it looks like it's more like 8. Does that change your opinion on the game? Were you like, oh, I'm buying it, now I'm not buying it? I'm curious about that one. Also, what about Ubisoft backpedaling, it seems, on the microtransactions? Seems like that happens quite a bit, right? They push just a bit, and then they're like, okay, no, everyone's mad, let's pull it back, and then we'll put it back when no one's watching. And then also, what about the Sony or Nintendo PlayStation? I get this Nintendo PlayStation. How much do you think it's gonna go for? And would you donate it to a museum, or would you just say, you know what, I'm gonna go where the money is, I'm gonna sell this thing? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.